For too long, domestic violence has been an invisible epidemic, hidden behind closed doors, misunderstood, and too often dismissed. At the S.E.E.N Summit, we believe every story deserves to be heard, every survivor deserves to be believed, and every person has the power to make a difference. Together, we are disarming domestic violence by shining a light on what's been unseen. With each episode, we are building awareness, deepening understanding, and creating space for healing and change. This is the S.E.E.N Summit Podcast, making the invisible visible, one conversation at a time.
Hi everyone, it's Mariah, the founder of S.E.E.N Summit. I'm jumping on to do a short episode with you today. We're going to talk through the S.E.E.N acronym, S-E-E-N, the acronym, what that stands for, and how you can use it as you go about your life to make sure that you're being seen, to make sure that the people in your close circles are being seen as well. The first letter in our acronym S.E.E.N is S. It stands for Taking Disclosures of Abuse Seriously. There are little S's that I like to add on to that, which are supporting survivors. The first E is educating. We are trying to educate the population largely about how prominent of an issue domestic violence is and what it looks like in reality outside of dramatizations and things like that. The next one is E, engaging within your circles of influence. There are a lot of statistics surrounding domestic violence. And so we know that within your circles of influence, there are people that are affected and or you've been affected yourself. So we really want to engage in those circles in practical ways. And then N is noticing. Notice red flags and warning signs. Part of that is knowing what to look for, and part of that is prioritizing, taking the time to really be aware of what's happening with the people around you and in your own relationships too. So just to touch on the first S, just really briefly, taking disclosures of abuse seriously. We did a lot more detail on this in our first episode. It matters a lot that you take for face value if someone is disclosing abuse to you. It is heart-wrenching. I can look back in my own journey and I know the stories of so many other survivors where a disclosure is made and betrayal happens on the other side of that. Disbelief happens on the other side of that. Very often people know both the perpetrator and the person who is being harmed. And sometimes those perpetrators are very charismatic. Sometimes they come in packages that look really cleaned up and look even kind or funny. And so it is hard for a lot of people who know both members of the relationship where there's an abusive dynamic to take it seriously. But I want to encourage you, if someone is in a place where they've come to you and gotten to a point where they are going to disclose, there's abuse that's been happening there for a long time. So I recommend you go back, listen to that first episode, gain a better understanding of why that first S, take it seriously, is so important. The other reason that I'll just touch on briefly is because in an abusive relationship, the person who's doing harm is feeding a narrative wherein this exact issue is going to take place. So survivors often won't disclose because they've been told if you tell someone, they won't believe you. Or you're making this up, it's not really happening. And then they go and disclose, and someone's like, oh, but aren't you being a little dramatic? I mean, aren't you kind of exaggerating? Or that type of thing. And it just reinforces that messaging that they're getting from the harm doer. And so it can be a catalyst for a lot further harm, a longer duration of harm. So it really is important to take it seriously. And when we think about if we were to witness a physical abuse, we would call 911. We would set emergency protocols into place. And when someone is disclosing abuse to you, just remember it's just as serious. It's not the same protocol that you're going to put into place, but it is just as serious. And so that kind of brings me into the little S's that I tag on to seriously, which is support survivors. Support can look like a lot of different things. So I'm going to kind of briefly touch on ways that it can take shape and ways that it really, really shouldn't. And so, one of our human instincts, if someone discloses something to us with a lot of significance attached to it, like an abusive relationship, we can kind of instinctually start asking a lot of questions. And there is some value to some of those questions, but I want to just offer a little bit of a guidepost for whether or not your questions are helpful and whether or not your questions are supportive. One of the things that you can check in with yourself about when you're having these conversations is, are you launching an investigation, or are you showing your investment in what's happening? So the difference could present itself in ways like, oh, wow, and then what did he do? And then what did you do? Oh, and then he said what? That's more of an investigation. That's more you trying to glean from these details, maybe a little bit of a drama fix, or maybe whether do I really believe them or not. That's you investigating the situation to draw a conclusion, or for some other means, which I won't go into too far, but that's not necessarily a helpful line of questioning. So that's investigation. Investing in the situation with genuine care looks a little bit more like, okay, thank you for telling me, and what would feel supportive to you right now? Thank you for telling me, and are you looking for help? Are you looking to connect to a resource? Are you just needing someone to talk to? Those kinds of questions offer support. And what I want to touch on in the line of seriously and supporting survivors as well is the difference between help, support, and endorsement. They are all different, and they each may have a role, but supporting is the piece that we need. Helping can be a form of support. Endorsement can be a form of support, but support in and of itself does not require helping or your endorsement. Examples: a survivor may come to you and disclose the abusive dynamic that they're living through, and they may also disclose to you that they plan to stay. Now, you as a loved one, probably with every fiber of your being, and understandably so, you don't endorse that plan. You don't want them to stay. You hate it for them. Totally goes against everything that you would endorse as a plan of action here. Now, your endorsement of their plan is not required, but your support is. You and I and any other loved one that is looking in on an abusive situation, and Amy Marla McCoy talks a great deal about this in the episode that we did together, really clarifying some terminology surrounding abuse. As we are looking in, we are looking through the little entrance into a cave that is very dark, it is very vast, and we do not understand any of the things that are taking place in it. We've got a very narrow purview into what's going on. The survivor is the expert. They know what they're comfortable with, and they're the ones that have to put any plan into action. They're the ones who are oftentimes best aware of what the risks are associated with their plans, and they're the ones that are going to pay the price with those risks if they take place. And that is also pertaining to if there are children involved. So there's a lot of layers. So support in and of itself does not require your help, does not require your endorsement. Those things can take place as a part of support. So we talked about endorsement a little bit. Your endorsement is not required. Some ways that it can be helpful is when a survivor is telling you, and you can sincerely offer back an endorsement of what their plan to find a way to feel safe is. Let's talk a little bit about help. It's also a very reasonable reaction upon hearing a disclosure of abuse to want to jump into action, right? We want to put on that Batman cape. We want to swoop in. We want to get people out. We want to get people to safety. And that is a good intention, and it's a good instinct because it shows that we care. The danger, again, in that is we are not the experts on what the best plan is. So during your, not investigation, but your investment questions into the scenario, when we're asking, is there a way I can help? Then you are a collaborator and you're acting in support. If the help is wanted, accepted, or even feasible, some of the ways that you might be able to help may not be helpful, and some of the ways they may need help you might not be able to offer. So just keep in mind, your help and your endorsement are not necessarily going to be factors in your support. So just keep that S in the back of your mind. It must be supportive. That can be help, that can be endorsement, but it is not necessarily going to include those. Some helpful tools. So if you are in a situation where you maybe even haven't received a disclosure yet and you are concerned, one of the helpful tools I've found, and this actually came to me as parenting advice for a toddler, so this is completely out of context that I recommend it, but is called the narrator tool. And so when you are parenting a toddler, to help them understand the world that's going on around them, you narrate for them. You started crying, and you're really, really wanting that toy. You started crying and you're really, really wanting that toy. And it just helps to narrate for them what their experience is. In situations where you're concerned that there may be abuse, you haven't necessarily received a disclosure from the person, you can start to narrate. And that may help clarify for you whether or not there's abuse present, but it may also help narrate for the person who's in that situation what is happening from an outside perspective. So for instance, you said no. You said no to him, and he kept asking. Yeah, you did say no to him, and he kept asking. Yeah, I can see your whole body language just changed when he called again. I can see that. So narrating can be helpful. It can pave the way for conversations without putting them on the defense. And be careful with what you narrate, that it is factual and not emotionally over the top, because that will then start to transition into the potential of putting them on the defensive. But just as you would with any other scenario, you can narrate what your visible experience is, and allow them to say back to you, like, oh yes, I was feeling really upset when he called, or really, did my body do that? it can prompt some thinking. It can be a helpful tool. Um, Alongside taking disclosures seriously and trying to offer what support we can, I want to encourage you too that it isn't necessarily your ability to do anything for that person that qualifies you to support them. There's a speaker that I really like. Her name is Belinda Lane, and she says this about something else, but I think it applies here really well. She says, it is not your ability, it's your availability. And I think that that holds true here. It's not necessarily that you are secretly Batman, like we talked about, and you are going to go get in this super cool car and drive through the night and save the day. It's that you're available for what they need, whether that's someone to listen to, whether that's someone to help ping back to them what the experience is looking like from the outside, whether that is getting them connected to resources, anything really. It's not necessarily that you are needing to be qualified with some special skill set, or like we said, even do anything that you would necessarily view as helping. It's your availability, not your ability. The last support tool that I kind of want to offer is when you're moving through this process with this loved one, coworker, anyone, is ask yourself, am I in any way threatening the bridge that lies between this person and myself? Survivors, people who are actively in abusive situations, there is a lot of instability. There's oftentimes threats associated to their relationships. There's oftentimes narratives about, if you do that, I will ruin your reputation. If you do that, I'll tell your friend this. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not, and she won't ever want to spend time with you again. Those types of things. So bridges here become really fragile and absolutely crucial structures. So if you are the parent, for instance, of someone who is in an abusive situation and you find yourself wanting to take action, you're provoked to protection, right? You do need to check in with yourself and say, is this action or this word that I want to offer, is it going to damage the bridge that lies between us? Ways that that can happen. If you don't leave him, I can't keep doing this for you anymore. You've made your choice. Pulling away resources. If that's the relationship you're going to choose, you can't stay with me anymore. Those types of things. And at the same time, I understand that we are all people and we all need to uphold boundaries and keep ourselves healthy, all those types of things. I just want you to exercise caution if anything that you're about to say or do in the spirit of help and support, if it's going to damage a bridge, those bridges can become lifelines. Sometimes they are literally lifelines for a person in an abusive situation. Just really exercise caution that any word or action that you take in this process is not going to damage the bridge that lies between you and that loved one. I'm going to move on to educate. Educating in this acronym, it takes place in two different vessels. We want to educate ourselves, okay? And you're doing that. You're here. You're on the channel. You're learning about different resources in case you need to point someone to them. You're learning about what ways you can and can't support survivors. You're looking at what warning signs are there for yourself or for the people that you love, for healthy and unhealthy relationships. All of the things, you're here, you're doing that. So that's vessel number one. You're educating yourself. The second piece of education is connecting someone who doesn't have that information, who needs it. So know the resources in your area, like we said. so that when you're using your investment, not investigation questions, are you interested in connecting to resources? You know one, you know two, you know a local one, you know a national one. You know ones that offer different services, stopgap housing, connection to legal services, all those types of things. So you're going to educate yourself, and in so doing, you are going to be able to educate, and the little e there would be empower someone who is in an abusive situation to educate themselves and make the best choice for their specific situation. Engaging. Engage in your circle of influence. This is the second E. We all have influence. You know, if you're a parent, you have influence over your children. If you are, and it doesn't matter what age they are, you have influence. If you are in the workforce in any way, shape, or form, you have got colleagues, you have got people that you're interacting with in some way. Even working from home, you're touching base with people virtually. You've got influence. The things that you spend your free time doing, any people associated with that, other family members, your spiritual communities, recreational communities, you have influence, and someone in your circle of influence is being affected, has been affected, or will be affected, and it also could be you. So it's really, really important that we don't just brush off our interactions in our areas of influence. We want to have conversations openly in the workplace. We want to let people know that safety is something that we really care about. And again, this is not a call to hypervigilance and paranoia, but it is a call to caring enough to slow down a little bit, to really look at the person's eyes when you're asking them how they're doing, and to engage in conversations about what it is that everyone deserves, which is to be seen and to be safe. And that kind of lends into the last letter in the acronym, which is N, noticing. There's a couple different parts to noticing red flags and warning signs. One of them is knowing what to look for. Go back and listen to the episodes that we've done. So much information about healthy versus unhealthy relationships, warning signs and flags. And you guys, it can really take on a pretty package. Domestic violence can show up in a really pretty package. I know one survivor who was receiving medical care, and her harm doer was with her at every appointment, and the people who she interacted with in her care team didn't pick up on the red flags, that she didn't really have any autonomy in the conversations that were going on about her care, or even just at the check-in process. I can look back in my own journey and think of a lot of different times that, for instance, I had a particular smile, and I knew how to perform this smile, even if a malicious threat had just been whispered in my ear. And I knew how to do that because I considered it of the utmost importance that no one find out what was going on. And so I was able to make that package look really picture pretty for people. So just be aware. We're not asking to dissect every couple that you come into contact with, but notice, is the smile genuine? Are they making eye contact? Do they have autonomy in this conversation? Does it seem to be equitable decision making that's occurring as we move throughout this process? there's lots of red flags and warning signs. So knowing what to look for, we've got lots of material on that. So absolutely check out the material that we've already done. But what you can do, even more than knowing, is choosing noticing. And that requires a lot more of us. That requires a lifestyle change. We are in a fast paced world. Slowing down, stopping, looking, asking how are you doing with enough time for a response, listening to that response, asking follow-up questions to that response. It can change a life, it can save a life, and you can do it. But it takes a great deal of reprioritization. And let me tell you, the people that made that priority with me changed everything. When, it's fine. I mean, he's mad a lot. Was met with, oh yeah, okay, yeah, gotta go. Shoot, I forgot I was supposed to run to Costco. That was a whole lot different than when it was met with, he's mad? Do you know about what? It's happening often? Then we're back to bridge building. You guys, it's hard. It's hard to build those lines of communication. It's a lot of pressure when you stop and think about the statistics of domestic violence. The risk is real. The danger is daunting. But if I could encourage you in one practical piece of noticing, maybe just listen. Listen to what's being said. Your listening will help so much more than you would ever probably realize. So, to make sure that domestic violence is not allowed the power of its secrecy anymore, we are going to make sure that things are being seen, and that is taking disclosures seriously. Little S's, supporting survivors. E, educating and empowering. Engaging in your circles of influence. And N, noticing red flags and warning signs. My son had a favorite story for a while, and in it, the characters, they snuggle up together and they watch a scary movie, and then they go to sleep, and it's just too scary. Everything after that, it seems like there's a monster outside the window. Each shadow must be something trying to get them. And at the end of the children's story, all of the scary things that were happening, that they thought were happening to them, turned out to be just tree branches grazing outside the windows, and, the kitty scratching at the door. But when we talk about domestic violence, there's no such reprieve. It's a very real danger, and it gets most of its power from operating in secrecy. It thrives hidden away and in the dark. So I hope that you leave today's episode knowing that you have ways to make this seen.
Thank you so much for being a part of the S.E.E.N Summit. The movement to end domestic violence starts with you. Keep tuning in, because when we come together, We are disarming the monster that is domestic violence of its most terrifying weapon, its invisibility. We are a community of survivors, loved ones, and leaders together making the invisible epidemic seen. Please share what you've learned today with others. When you subscribe, like, or share this podcast, you help us to reach more individuals and organizations who can make a difference. We'll see you next time at S.E.E.N Summit.